Listen here, child. Come close to this old fire that burns in the veins of time. I'm the keeper of memories, the griot of forgotten shadows, carrying on these bent shoulders the weight of chains that rattled in the belly of ships crossing the Middle Passage. They call me many names, but tonight I speak for them that can't speak no more. For the souls sold on auction blocks, for the mothers torn from their babies, for the men who died with freedom songs on their lips. Down in the deep south of Georgia, round about 1840, there stood a plantation called Willow Creek. White columns high as sin itself, cotton fields stretching like a sea of suffering, and beneath that big house, Lord have mercy, there was a cellar. A dark hole where the earth swallowed screams and rats grew fat on human misery. In them days of deep sorrow, folks whispered about a woman, strong-backed, fierce of spirit, with eyes that carried the fire of African ancestors. They called her Betsy. Now what I'm about to tell you ain't written in no white man's books. This here story lives in the wind that still blows through them cotton fields. It's in the cry of mothers who never saw their children again. It's in the blood that red Georgia Clay drank and never forgot. Betsy spent 120 days in that cellar, 4 moons waxing and waning, chained in darkness so complete it could swallow your soul whole. But darkness don't kill what's already burning with the light of vengeance. The old ones warned us, when iron bites flesh long enough, either the spirit breaks or the iron does. Betsy chose the iron, and when she rose from that pit, she rose like judgment itself. Settle your heart now, 'cause this tale cuts deep. The sun beat down on Willow Creek plantation like the devil's own hammer, turning the red clay to dust and the cotton bolls to little clouds of suffering. In them cotton fields stretching far as the eye could see, bent backs moved in rhythm, a terrible dance of bondage that started before dawn and ended when darkness fell like a curse upon the land. Among them bodies moving slow and steady, one figure stood different. Betsy. She was 18 summers old, tall and lean like a cypress tree, with skin the color of river clay and hands that knew every kind of labor God and master could devise. Her mama came across that terrible water from Senegal, carrying wisdom older than slavery itself, and though they sold that woman away when Betsy was just a child of 7, the knowledge stayed. It lived in Betsy's bones like African drums nobody could silence. Wade in the water, children, Betsy sang low, her voice carrying across the rows where other field hands worked. To the white folks and the cruel overseer Cobb riding his horse along the edge of the field, it was just another spiritual. Them songs the slaves sang to make the day pass quicker. But them that knew, them that listened with hearts open, they heard different words woven in. Follow the drinking gourd at North Star gonna lead you home. Old Silas, working the row next to her, he caught her eye and gave the smallest nod. His gray head bent lower over the cotton, but his soul heard every word. Down the way, young Josiah, strong-backed man with shoulders built for carrying the world, he heard too. Lord have mercy, that boy made Betsy's heart beat strange. In the quiet of the quarters at night, when the moon hung low and the overseers slept off their whiskey, Josiah would slip to her cabin door. They'd talk in whispers about freedom, about the Underground Railroad they heard tell of, about Harriet Tubman, who folks called Moses, secret courtin' between the cabins, love growing in a place that tried to kill all tender things. But Master Harlan, he noticed things. That white man had eyes like a hawk circling over dying prey. From the big house porch, he'd watch Betsy moving through the cotton, and his gaze carried a hunger that made her skin crawl. He was a man gone to seed with whiskey and cruelty, maybe 40 years old, but looking older, with hands that never knew honest work and a soul already sold to darkness. His wife, Mistress Caroline, she stayed locked in her rooms most days, sick with something the doctor couldn't name but everybody knew was just sorrow wearing human flesh. That gal there, Master Harlan said to Overseer Cobb one afternoon, pointing his riding crop toward Betsy. She's got spirit that needs breaking. Been watching her, too proud, too defiant. He said that last word like it was a curse, which in his world it was. Cobb, mean driver that he was, nodded slow. Want me to take her to the whipping post, suh? Few lashes might gentle her down. Not yet, Master Harlan's voice went soft, which was worse than his yelling. Not yet, but watch her close, real close. That evening, when the work bell finally rang and them exhausted souls dragged themselves back to the quarters, them rough cabins that barely kept out rain and never kept out cold, Betsy found young Lila waiting by her door. The girl was maybe 15, pretty thing with fear written all over her face like a brand mark. "Miss Betsy," Lila whispered, looking around nervous. "They gonna sell me tomorrow. Heard Master Harlan talking to a trader from New Orleans. Said I'd fetch good money in them fancy houses down there." Her voice broke. "Please, you said you knew people. You said there was a way." Betsy's heart went heavy in her chest. She pulled Lila inside the cabin where the walls were thin, but at least the shadows gave some privacy. "Hush now, child. Don't speak so loud. Them walls got ears and patty rollers got dogs that can smell fear." She looked into Lila's eyes, scared to death that girl was, and made a choice that would change everything. "Tonight," Betsy said low, "when the moon reaches its highest point, you meet me at the edge of the swamp near that old lightning-struck oak. You know the one?" Lila nodded, tears running down her face. "Thank you, Miss Betsy, thank you. I knew you was the one. Folks say you got power, that your mama taught you things. Don't matter what folks say." Betsy gripped the girl's shoulders. "What matters is you follow exactly what I tell you. You wade in the water when I say wade. You stay silent when I say hush. And you trust that the North Star don't lie. Can you do that?" "Yes'm, Lord, yes." After Lila left, Betsy sat on her hard wooden pallet and felt the weight of what was coming. She knew the risks. Helping runaways was a killing offense. They'd whip you till your back looked like plowed field, or worse. Sell you down river where the sugar plantations ate people alive and spit out bones. But how could she not help? How could she sing about freedom and not help a sister reach for it? Come midnight, when most of the quarters was deep asleep, though sleep in bondage ain't never true rest, Betsy moved like a shadow. She'd learned from the old root doctor who died last winter. Learned how to step quiet, how to read the night, how to ask the spirits for covering. She reached that lightning-struck oak where Spanish moss hung down like the beards of sad old men, and there was Lila, shaking like a leaf in storm wind. "Here." Betsy pressed a small cloth bag into Lila's hand. "Mojo bag. Got red brick dust, sage, and a piece of high john root. Keep it close. It'll help confuse them dogs." She pointed north. "Follow the creek till you reach the wide river. Look for a man called Samuel. He's a conductor. He'll know what to do next, and remember, follow the drinking gourd." "But what about you?" Lila asked. "Won't they know it was you who helped?" Betsy smiled, though there wasn't no joy in it. "Let me worry about that child. Now go." "Go?" She watched Lila disappear into them deep woods, swallowed by darkness and possibility. Then she turned to head back to the quarters, her heart both light and heavy at once. Light because another soul moved toward freedom. Heavy because... That's when she saw him. Overseer Cobb sitting on his horse at the edge of the clearing, his face half hidden in shadow but his eyes gleaming mean in the moonlight. He'd seen everything. Been watching the whole time. Lord have mercy, he'd been waiting. Laying a trap like she was some animal to be caught. "Well, well," Cobb said, his voice full of cruel pleasure. "Looks like we got ourselves a conductor. Master Harlan gonna be real interested to hear about this." Betsy stood there, rooted like that lightning-struck oak, watching as Cobb turned his horse toward the big house. She could run. Part of her wanted to follow Lila into them woods and never look back. But running meant leaving Josiah, leaving old Silas, leaving all the others who depended on her for hope and healing. Running meant Master Harlan would take his rage out on the whole quarters. So she walked back to her cabin, each step feeling like the last free one she'd ever take. She could hear the night sounds, crickets singing, an owl hooting warnings, and far off, the baying of hounds that might soon be tracking Lila's scent. She prayed to the ancestors, to the spirits, to whatever God might listen to a slave's desperate plea. Let that girl make it. Let her cross over to freedom. And whatever comes for me, give me strength to bear it. Inside her cabin, she didn't even try to sleep. She sat on her pallet and sang, soft as breath. "Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home." The old spiritual her mama taught her, the one that spoke of deliverance in the freedom land beyond this veil of tears. Just before dawn broke, that gray time when night and day wrestle for control, she heard it. Heavy boots on hard ground, not the regular morning call, not the work bell. No, this was something else. This was reckoning coming. The door burst open. Master Harlan himself stood there, face red with rage and whiskey, with Overseer Cobb and 2 field drivers behind him. "You think you're Moses now?" Master Harlan spat. "You think you can steal my property and there won't be consequences?" Betsy stood up slow, meeting his eyes straight on. Even now, even facing this, she wouldn't bow. That girl ain't property. She's a child of God, same as anybody. The slap came fast, knocking her sideways. Stars burst behind her eyes, but she stayed on her feet. Stubborn old determination, her mama would have called it. "Tie her," Master Harlan ordered. "We're gonna make an example. Bring her to the yard. I want every slave on this plantation to see what happens to troublemakers." They dragged her out into the morning light, where the quarters was coming awake. Folks stepped out of their cabins, scared breathless, knowing something terrible was unfolding. Betsy saw Josiah's face in the crowd, his eyes full of helpless rage and love. She tried to give him a look that said, "Don't do nothing foolish. Stay alive." But the anguish in his expression cut deeper than any whip ever could. Master Harlan stood on the porch of the big house, addressing the assembled slaves like some kind of twisted preacher. "This woman here helped a valuable piece of property escape. Cost me $1,500, but it ain't just about the money. It's about order. It's about knowing your place." He turned to Betsy, his voice dropping to something quiet and deadly. "I could whip you till you couldn't stand. Could sell you south, but no. I got something special in mind. Something that'll break that spirit once and for all. You're gonna spend time in the cellar beneath the big house, in the dark, in chains. And when you come out, if you come out, you'll be a new woman, a proper slave." The cellar, folks whispered about that place, said it was where Master Harlan's daddy used to chain the most rebellious slaves, sometimes for weeks. Some never came out the same. Some never came out at all. 120 days, Master Harlan pronounced, like he was a judge handing down sentence. 4 months in darkness to think about your sins, to remember who owns you. A gasp went through the crowd. Even the overseers looked surprised. That was a death sentence, or close enough. They dragged Betsy toward the big house. She twisted to look back one last time at the quarters, at her people, at Josiah, who looked like his soul was being ripped out, at old Silas, who nodded once, an elder's blessing, at the young ones who needed to see that defiance, even when it cost everything. "Don't let 'em see you cry," someone called out. Betsy couldn't tell who. She wouldn't. Mother's cry cuts like a knife, but she'd swallow that pain, pack it down deep where the darkness couldn't reach. The cellar door opened like a mouth to hell itself. Stone steps led down into blackness so complete it seemed alive. The smell hit her first. Damp earth, mildew, rat droppings, and something else. Despair, maybe. The accumulated suffering of everyone who'd been chained there before. They shoved her down the steps. In the dim light from above, she could see stone walls, a dirt floor, and chains bolted to the foundation. Heavy iron shackles that looked older than slavery in America, brought over from some other place of suffering. Overseer Cobb fitted the manacles around her wrists and ankles, pulling them tight enough to bite into skin. "Sweet dreams, gal," he whispered with a mean laugh. Then they left. The door slammed shut, and with it went the last piece of light. Complete and total darkness swallowed her whole. Betsy stood there, or tried to, but the chains was short, forcing her to crouch or sit, and let her eyes adjust. But there was nothing to adjust to. This wasn't dim. This wasn't shadow. This was the absence of light so pure it felt like being buried alive. From far above, muffled by stone and wood, she could hear Master Harlan's voice addressing the slaves one last time. "Let this be a lesson to all of you. Disobedience has consequences." Down in her tomb of darkness, Betsy felt the cold seeping into her bones. She was still wearing just her thin work dress, no blanket, no comfort. Just stone, chains, and an endless night that would last 120 days, if she survived. The first sound she made was a scream, not of fear but of rage. It echoed off the stone walls and came back to her, a wounded animal sound that she barely recognized as her own voice. Then, from somewhere in the darkness, she heard something move, the scratch of tiny claws on stone. Rats. Of course there'd be rats. Betsy closed her eyes, though in this darkness it made no difference, and reached for the strength her mama had taught her, the resilience of her African ancestors who'd survived the Middle Passage, the power of spirits who walked beside the suffering. "I ain't gonna break," she whispered to the darkness, to herself, to whatever might be listening. "You can chain my body, but my soul still knows freedom. And one day, She didn't finish that thought. Couldn't yet. But deep in her chest, where no chain could reach, a promise began to form, hard and cold and sharp as the iron that bound her. Above ground, as the sun rose over Willow Creek Plantation, the field hands went back to work. But everything had changed. Betsy's absence was a hole in the fabric of their days, and whispers moved through the quarters like wind through cotton. How long can she last down there? What will she be when she comes out? Will she ever come out at all? And in the big house, Master Harlan poured himself a morning whiskey, satisfied that he'd put down a rebellion before it could truly start. He had no idea that in the darkness beneath his feet, something was being born. Not breaking, but forging. Like iron and fire, Betsy was transforming into something that would haunt him until his last breath. The quiet of the quarters speaks loud that morning. Too loud, like the silence before a storm that would shake the foundations of everything Willow Creek stood for. But that storm was still 120 days away, for now there was only darkness, chains, and one woman's unbreakable will. In the complete darkness of that cellar, time ain't got no meaning. Could be hours, could be days. Betsy couldn't tell no more. The cold had worked its way so deep into her bones she wondered if she'd ever feel warmth again. But even colder than the stone floor beneath her was the memory that rose up, unbidden, from the depths of her mind. A memory she'd tried to bury for 11 years. Charleston, South Carolina. Summer of 1829. Betsy was 7 years old. The sun that day blazed hot as hellfire itself, turning the cobblestones into griddles that burned through the thin soles of slave shoes. Betsy stood clutching her mama's hand, that strong, calloused hand that had picked cotton, cooked meals, and wiped away so many tears. They were lined up with maybe 50 other slaves outside the auction house on Chalmers Street, where white men in fine suits examined black bodies like cattle at market. Mama's name was Aminata. She carried herself with a dignity that slavery couldn't quite kill, though God knows it tried. Her back bore the crosshatch scars of whippings, but her spirit, Lord have mercy, her spirit was a flame that wouldn't be snuffed. She knew things, root medicine, spirit work, the old ways from across the water. That knowledge made her valuable, but also dangerous. "Mama, why we here?" little Betsy had asked, her voice small and scared. Aminata squeezed her daughter's hand. "Hush now, child. Remember what I told you. You're a daughter of Yamoja, goddess of the waters. You got rivers running through your veins and oceans in your soul. Don't matter what these white folks do to your body, they can't touch what's inside." A white man in a stained vest approached, his breath reeking of tobacco and decay. "This one here?" He grabbed Aminata's arm, turning her this way and that like she was a horse. "Strong-backed, good teeth. Says here she's a conjure woman. That true?" The slave trader, a wretched soul named Simmons, nodded. "Yes, sir. She's worth more than most. Got healing knowledge, can birth babies, and the field hands listen when she speaks. But," he lowered his voice, "that's also why her current master's selling. Says she's got too much influence, makes the others restless." The man in the vest grunted. "I'll take my chances, need a woman who can manage the sick ones on my place." He looked down at Betsy with cold calculation. "The child come with her?" "Separate sale, sir." Young as she is, she'll fetch her own price. That's when Betsy understood. They were selling Mama, selling her away, taking her somewhere Betsy couldn't follow. The terror that gripped her small heart was like drowning in dry air. "No!" Betsy screamed, wrapping her arms around her mama's waist. "No, you can't take my mama!" A rough hand grabbed Betsy's shoulder. The trader's assistant, a cruel-eyed man who didn't see children, just property. He tried to pull her away, but Betsy held on like her life depended on it. Which, in a way, it did. "Betsy," Aminata said, her voice breaking for the first time. She knelt down, despite the chains on her ankles, and looked into her daughter's eyes. "Listen to me, child. Listen good. You're stronger than you know. You got the blood of warriors and queens. When things get dark, and they will get dark, you remember, our people survived the Middle Passage. We survived the whipping post and the auction block. We survived by carrying each other in our hearts." She reached into her dress and pulled out a small cloth bag, sewn shut with careful stitches. "This here's a mojo bag. Got graveyard dirt from my mama's resting place back in Senegal. High John root for strength, and a piece of black iron for protection. You keep this close, and you remember, death ain't the end for folks like us. We come back in different forms. I'll be watching over you, even when you can't see me." The trader's assistant yanked Betsy away then, hard enough to bruise. She fell to the hot cobblestones, her palms scraping raw. When she looked up, they were dragging Aminata toward the auction block, a raised wooden platform where human beings were sold like sacks of grain. The auctioneer, a portly man with a voice that carried across the square, began his terrible chant. "Here we have a prime female, age approximately 30, skilled in midwifery, root medicine, and field work. Strong constitution, no recent illnesses. Who'll start the bidding at $800? Betsy watched, horrified, as white hands shot up around the square, each one representing a future where she'd never see her mama again. The bidding went higher, 900, 1,000, 1,200, while Aminata stood on that block with her head held high, refusing to let them see her broken. "Sold," the auctioneer finally called. "To Mr. Jonathan Whitfield of Louisiana for $1,400. Louisiana. Folks whispered about Louisiana plantations like they whispered about hell itself. Sugar cane fields where slaves died like flies, where overseers made Deep South cotton plantations look merciful by comparison. They led Aminata down from the block. As they passed where Betsy sat crying on the cobblestones, Aminata twisted to look at her daughter one last time. Their eyes met, a mother's love pouring across the distance, trying to fill a child's soul with enough strength to last a lifetime. "Remember," Aminata called out, "you are my daughter. You are—" A whip cracked, cutting off her words. They dragged her toward a wagon already loaded with newly purchased slaves, all bound for the Mississippi River and points south. Betsy screamed until her voice gave out. She tried to run after the wagon, but hands held her back. Not cruel this time, but pitying. An old slave woman who'd been waiting her turn on the block pulled Betsy close. "Hush now, child. Hush. Your mama's gone, but she ain't lost. You hear me? Strong woman like that don't ever truly leave. She's in your blood now, in your bones. You carry her with you." But 7-year-old Betsy couldn't understand that kind of wisdom. All she knew was the wagon was pulling away, taking her mama to a place she'd never reach. The dust kicked up by the wheels seemed to symbolize everything. How quickly a life could be scattered. How little control any of them had over their own fates. They sold Betsy that afternoon to Master Harlan's father, old Edmund Harlan, who needed young slaves to grow into his workforce. The transaction took less than 5 minutes. A man she'd never seen before paid $300 and became her owner. Just like that, her childhood, already stolen, was replaced with bondage on a Georgia plantation far from Charleston, far from any chance of finding her mama again. The worst part wasn't even the separation. It was the not knowing. For 11 years, Betsy had wondered, did Mama survive Louisiana? Did she think about her daughter? Was she still alive? Or had those sugar cane fields consumed her like they consumed so many? The memory faded, pulling Betsy back to the present darkness of the cellar. She realized she'd been crying. The tears ran down her face and dripped onto the cold stone floor, each one a small defiance against the attempt to break her. Because that memory, painful as it was, reminded her of something crucial. She was Aminata's daughter. She carried her mama's strength, her wisdom, her unbreakable spirit. Betsy's hand reached for the small mojo bag that still hung around her neck, hidden under her dress. After 11 years, the cloth was worn thin, but it was still there, still carrying the power of connection, of memory, of survival. "I hear you, Mama," she whispered into the darkness. "I remember." Somewhere above, she could hear the muffled sounds of the big house coming to life. Footsteps, voices, the clatter of breakfast being prepared. It must be morning, though down here day and night was all the same. How many mornings had passed already? 1, 2. She'd lost track already, and this was just the beginning. Her stomach cramped with hunger. They'd thrown her down here without food, without water. Overseer Cobb had made it clear. Master Harlan will decide when and if you eat. Maybe tomorrow, maybe next week. Depends on his mood. But Betsy had survived worse than hunger. Every slave knew hunger as an intimate companion. When rations ran short, when Massa punished the quarters by cutting food, when the crop failed and they fed the white folks first. Her body knew how to stretch on little, how to find strength in emptiness. What was harder was the darkness itself. It pressed in from all sides, thick and suffocating. In this complete absence of light, her mind started playing tricks. She'd see flashes that weren't there, phantom images of her mama, of the auction block, of Josiah's face. Were these visions, or was she already losing her grip on sanity? The scratch of rats grew closer. Betsy had counted at least 3 by their sounds, maybe more. One grew bold enough to nibble at her ankle, and she kicked out instinctively, rattling her chains. The rat squealed and scurried away, but it would be back. They always came back. "This is what they want," she told herself, her voice hoarse in the darkness. "They want me to break, want me to become some pitiful soul that they can remake into a proper slave. But I know what proper really means. It means dead inside, means giving up the fight." She thought about Lila. Had the girl made it? Was she even now crossing some river toward freedom, guided by the North Star and the network of brave souls who ran the Underground Railroad? Or had the patty rollers caught her, brought her back to face consequences even worse than this cellar? Betsy prayed. Not to the white man's God that justified slavery with twisted Bible verses, but to the old gods. To Umoja that her mama spoke of. To the ancestors who'd made the terrible Middle Passage journey. To the spirits of those who died fighting, who died running, who died with hope still burning in their hearts. "Give me strength," she prayed. "Give me the power to last. However long this takes, however dark it gets, let me come out of here still me. Still Betsy. Still free inside where it matters most." Above her, a door slammed. Heavy footsteps on the floor of the big house. Then, terrifyingly, the sound of boots on stairs. Someone was coming. The cellar door creaked open. Light flooded in, just lamplight, but after the complete darkness it was blinding. Betsy squeezed her eyes shut against the sudden assault, then forced them open, squinting. Master Harlan stood at the top of the steps, lamp in one hand, a plate of food in the other. Behind him, Overseer Cobb waited with a whip coiled at his belt. "Well, well," Master Harlan drawled, his words slightly slurred. He'd been drinking already, though it couldn't be past noon. "How's my troublesome property enjoying her accommodations?" Betsy said nothing. Wouldn't give him the satisfaction. He descended the steps slowly, each boot strike echoing off stone. Up close, she could see his face clearly, puffy from alcohol, eyes cold and calculating, a cruel smile playing at his lips. This was a man who enjoyed suffering, who found pleasure in the exercise of absolute power. "You know what your problem is?" He set the plate down just out of her reach, close enough to smell the cornbread and beans, far enough that she couldn't get to it. "You think you're special, think you're better than what you are, but let me tell you something." He knelt down, bringing his face close to hers. His breath stank of whiskey and decay. "You're nothing. Your property. Same as a mule or a chair or this lamp I'm holding. The only difference is I can break a chair and nobody cares. But you? I'm gonna take my time with you. Gonna break you slow." He reached out and grabbed her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. Betsy wanted to spit in his face, to bite his hand, to do anything to fight back. But the chains held her tight, and she knew resistance now would only make things worse. "Cat got your tongue?" he mocked. "That's all right, we got 120 days for you to find your voice. And when you do, I expect it'll be saying, 'Yes, master,' and 'Whatever you want, master.' I expect you'll be thanking me for not selling you downriver like I should have done." He stood up, taking the plate with him. The movement was deliberate, showing her food, then taking it away. Psychological torture to go with the physical. "Maybe tomorrow you'll eat," he said, already climbing the stairs. "Or maybe the day after. Depends on how I'm feeling. Depends on whether you've learned anything yet." The door slammed shut again. Darkness crashed back down like a wave, and with it came despair so thick Betsy could taste it. Her stomach cramped harder now that it knew food existed somewhere close. The smell of cornbread lingered in the damp air, tormenting her. She wanted to cry, wanted to scream, wanted to curse Master Harlan's name and call down every demon from hell to drag him under. But she knew that's exactly what he wanted. He wanted her to waste her strength on rage and sorrow, wanted her to exhaust herself fighting shadows. Instead, Betsy forced herself to breathe slowly, to find the calm center that her mama had taught her existed inside every person, no matter the circumstances. It wasn't easy. Lord, it wasn't easy, but it was possible. "One day down," she whispered, 119 to go. "I can do this, I have to do this." Because if she broke, what message did that send to Josiah? To old Silas? To every slave on Willow Creek who looked to her for hope? If she couldn't survive 120 days, how could she expect them to survive a lifetime? More than that. If she broke, Master Harlan won. He won completely. And Betsy would rather die in these chains than give him that satisfaction. So she settled back against the cold stone wall, ignoring the rats, ignoring the hunger, ignoring the absolute darkness pressing in from all sides. She closed her eyes and thought about her mama, about the auction block in Charleston, about how Aminata had stood tall even as they sold her into hell. "I'm still your daughter," Betsy whispered to the memory, "still carrying what you gave me. And I swear on your name, on the ancestors, on every spirit that watches over us, I won't break, I won't." Above her, the big house settled into afternoon routines. Master Harlan poured another whiskey. Mistress Caroline stared out her window at nothing. Overseer Cobb rode through the fields with his whip, keeping the cotton pickers working despite the brutal heat. And down in the cellar, in darkness so complete it felt like being erased from existence, Betsy began the long journey through her 120 days. Each day would be its own battle, each hour its own small death and resurrection. But she would endure, because that's what her people did. They endured. From the auction block to the cotton field, from the whipping post to the slave quarters, from the middle passage to right here, right now, they endured. And when she came out of this darkness, Master Harlan would learn what it meant to try and break someone who carried the strength of Aminata, the pride of Africa, and the burning need for justice that no chain could ever contain. The rats returned, bolder now. Betsy let them come. In this darkness, everything was equal. Everything was suffering. Everything was survival. 120 days, she counted in the darkness. Then we'll see who's really broken. Listen here, child, 'cause what I'm about to tell you tests the limits of human endurance. In them days of deep sorrow, when Betsy had been down in that cellar maybe 3-4 days, though time had become a slippery thing, like water running through desperate fingers, the darkness started doing things to her mind that no whipping post ever could. The brew absoluto, that's what the old ones called it. Complete blackness so thick you could choke on it. Betsy's eyes stayed wide open, searching for any trace of light. But there was nothing, not even the faintest gray. Just endless, suffocating dark that pressed against her eyeballs like thumbs trying to push them back into her skull. The rats had grown bolder. She'd counted 5 distinct sounds now, though there might be more. One big one, she called him Devil in her mind, had taken to running across her legs when she dozed off. The first time it happened, she'd screamed so loud her throat went raw. Now she just tensed up, waiting for the scratchy feel of claws and the weight of a body grown fat on whatever poor souls had been chained here before. Hunger was eating her from the inside. Master Harlan had come down twice more, always with food she couldn't reach, always with words designed to cut deeper than any blade. "You ready to beg yet?" he'd asked yesterday. Or was it 2 days ago? "You ready to say please, master? I'll be good from now on?" Betsy had stayed silent, though her stomach cramped something terrible, and her mouth felt like she'd been eating cotton straight from the field. She wouldn't beg, wouldn't give him that satisfaction. But Lord have mercy, the hunger was wearing her down faster than the darkness. Then there was the cold, deep bone cold that never left, that turned her joints stiff and made her muscles cramp. The thin dress she wore might as well have been nothing. She'd tried wrapping her arms around herself, but the chains kept her from getting much comfort. At night, though how she knew it was night she couldn't say, the temperature dropped even further and she'd shake so hard the chains rattled like death's own music. But the worst part, the thing that truly tested her, was the voices. At first, Betsy thought someone else was down there with her. She'd hear whispers coming from the corners, snatches of conversation in a language that sounded like her mama's Wolof mixed with English. Sometimes she'd hear singing, old spirituals, work songs, lullabies her mama used to hum. "Who there?" she'd call out, her voice cracking. "Show yourself." But nobody answered. Just more whispers, more singing that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Were these the spirits her mama had told her about? The ancestors watching over her? Or was this what happened when a mind started coming undone in absolute darkness? One time, maybe the 4th day, maybe the 5th, she heard her mama's voice clear as day. "Betsy, child, you gotta stay strong now. You got to remember what I taught you." "Mama?" Betsy's heart leaped with desperate hope. "Mama, that you? They bring you back from Louisiana?" Silence, then fainter. "The darkness ain't your enemy, child. The darkness is where power lives. Root doctors work in the dark of night. Conjure women do their strongest magic when the moon is new, and the sky is black. You hear me? The dark is where you find your true self." Betsy started crying then, not from fear or pain, but from the strange comfort of that voice, real or imagined. "I'm trying, Mama. Lord knows I'm trying, but it's so hard. Hard is what makes us who we are," the voice whispered back. "Easy breaks, hard survives." When the voice faded, Betsy found herself exploring the cellar as much as her chains would allow. She couldn't stand up straight. The chains kept her bent or sitting, but she could reach maybe 3 feet in any direction. With her hands, she felt along the stone wall behind her. Cold, damp, covered in something slimy that she tried not to think about too much. Then her fingers found something. Piece of metal, thin and sharp, sticking out from where the mortar had crumbled between stones. It was maybe 4 inches long, rusty and jagged. Without thinking too hard about why it was there or what it had been used for before, Betsy worked it loose. Took her maybe an hour of careful wiggling, her fingertips getting torn up on the sharp edges. But finally it came free. A weapon, or a tool, or maybe just a small piece of hope made solid. She tested the edge against her thumb and felt it bite. Sharp enough. She tucked it into the waistband of her dress, hidden where no one would think to look. If Master Harlan came down here again with his hands reaching for what he had no right to take, she'd have something to defend herself with. Wouldn't be much, but it was better than nothing. That night, and she decided it was night because the house above had gone quiet, Betsy heard new sounds. Footsteps, but not on the cellar stairs. These were above her in what must be the main floor of the big house. Back and forth, like someone pacing. Then a woman's voice, high and distressed. Edmund, please, don't go down there again. Leave her be." Mistress Caroline. The master's sickly wife who rarely left her rooms. Master Harlan's voice came through, muffled but clear. "Mind your business, woman. She's my property, and I'll do with her as I please." "It's not right." 4 days without food, without water. You'll kill her. She's stronger than you think, and even if she dies, it'll be a lesson to the others. Nobody steals from me. Nobody helps my property escape. Now get back to your room." The footsteps moved away. A door slammed. Then silence again, heavy as chains. Betsy's mind worked on what she'd heard. 4 days. So it had been 4 days. That meant 116 to go. The number felt impossible, like counting every star in the sky. How could a person survive 116 more days of this? She touched the mojo bag around her neck, feeling its weight through her dress. Then her hand moved to the sharp piece of metal hidden at her waist. 2 different kinds of power, one spiritual, one physical. Her mama's legacy and her own will to survive, combined. "I can do this," she whispered to the darkness. 4 days down. Just got to take it 1 day at a time, 1 hour, 1 breath. The devil rat ran across her leg again. This time, Betsy didn't scream. She reached out quick and caught it. Lord, the feel of that warm, squirming body in her hands made her stomach turn. But hunger was stronger than disgust. With a swift motion, she slammed it against the stone floor. The rat went still. For a long moment, Betsy just sat there, holding the dead animal, her heart pounding. Then she thought about the sugar plantations in Louisiana where her mama had been sent. Thought about all the slaves who'd done worse things than this just to survive another day. Thought about how Master Harlan was trying to starve her into submission. She found the sharpest edge of her hidden metal shard and got to work. It wasn't easy in the pitch dark, and she cut her own fingers more than once, but eventually she had meat. Raw rat meat that would probably make her sick, but it was food. It was survival. "Forgive me, Lord," she prayed before taking the first bite. "Forgive me, ancestors, but I got to live. Got to make it through this darkness to see the other side." The meat was tough and tasted like it smelled, which is to say terrible. But Betsy forced it down. Every bite was an act of defiance. Every swallow was her telling Master Harlan, "You can't break me. I'll eat rats if I have to. I'll drink water that drips from these walls. I'll do whatever it takes to walk out of here still me." When she finished, she wiped her bloody hands on her dress and settled back against the wall. Her stomach cramped from the raw meat, but there was also a small satisfaction. She'd fed herself. Taken control of one tiny thing in a situation designed to take away all control. The whispers came back then, stronger. Maybe it was delirium from hunger. Maybe it was the ancestors really speaking. But Betsy heard them clear. "That's right, child. You survive. Any way you got to. The master thinks he's teaching you a lesson, but he don't know. Suffering is what we're made of. Pain is our inheritance, and from that pain we forge steel." Betsy closed her eyes in the darkness and smiled. A terrible smile, full of grim determination. "Come down here again, Master Harlan," she whispered to the ceiling above. "Keep thinking you're breaking me. But every day I survive is a day I get stronger. Every hour in this darkness is teaching me things you can't imagine. And when I get out..." She didn't finish the thought. Couldn't yet. But the promise was forming in her heart like a seed planted in blood-soaked ground. It would grow. In time, it would grow into something Master Harlan couldn't control. Something he should fear. The darkness pressed in. The rats rustled, and Betsy, daughter of Aminata, survivor of 4 days in hell, settled in to endure whatever came next. 116 days to go. Now listen here, 'cause this is where the story gets dark in ways that go beyond just the absence of light. Maybe 2 weeks had passed, though Betsy kept count by the times Master Harlan descended those stairs, and she marked 14 visits in her mind. 14 times the cellar door opened, and lamplight spilled down like false salvation. His visits followed a pattern, and Betsy learned to read him like the old root doctors read signs in nature. When he came early in the day, before the whiskey had hold of him proper, he'd just taunt her, move food close enough to smell but not to reach, throw down a cup of brackish water that mostly spilled before she could drink. But when he came late, after the sun had set and his drinking was in full swing, that's when the devil in him truly showed his face. "You're looking mighty thin, gal. he said on what Betsy counted as day 15, his words slurring together like mud sliding down a bank. He stood at the bottom of the stairs, swaying slightly, lamp in one hand and a bottle of whiskey in the other. Almost skeletal. But I can still see why the field hands look at you the way they do. Still got that defiant beauty about you. Betsy stayed silent, though every muscle in her body tensed. She'd come to recognize that particular tone in his voice, the one that meant danger of a different kind than starvation or cold. Her hand moved instinctively to where she'd hidden the metal shard in her dress. You know what I think? Master Harlan set the lamp down and took a long pull from his bottle. I think you're down here plotting rebellion, thinking about how you're gonna lead some kind of uprising when you get out. That's what Moses was, wasn't she? Just a slave woman who got ideas above her station. He started walking closer, his boots scuffing on the stone floor. Betsy could smell him now. Whiskey, sweat, and something rancid underneath that made her stomach turn even emptier than it already was. But see, I'm gonna break you of those thoughts. Gonna show you exactly what you are. His hand reached for her face and Betsy jerked back as far as the chains allowed, which wasn't far. You're mine. My property. And property don't say no to its owner. Touch me and you'll regret it, Betsy said, her voice raw from disuse but steady as iron. I swear on every ancestor, every spirit, every power that watches over my people. You'll pay for what you done and what you trying to do. Master Harlan laughed, but there was nervousness under it. Even drunk, even powerful, some part of him feared what he saw in her eyes. Empty threats from a woman in chains. You can't hurt me, gal. You're helpless. Am I? Betsy's hand closed around the metal shard hidden at her waist. Come closer and find out. They stared at each other in the lamplight, master and slave, oppressor and oppressed. But in that moment, something shifted. Master Harlan saw something in Betsy's face that made him hesitate. Maybe it was the absolute lack of fear. Maybe it was the promise of violence that she carried like a living thing. Or maybe it was just the whiskey making him cautious. He backed up, trying to save face. I got time. 105 more days to break that spirit. And I will break it, mark my words. One way or another, you'll submit. The only thing that's gonna be broken, Betsy said quietly, is whatever part of you thinks you can own a human soul. Master Harlan's face went red with rage. He grabbed his whip from his belt, he always carried it now, even in his own house, and lashed out. The leather caught Betsy across the shoulder, tearing through her thin dress and opening flesh. She bit down on her tongue to keep from crying out, tasting blood, refusing to give him the satisfaction of her pain. That's for the disrespect, he spat. Next time I come down here, you better have found some manners. He grabbed his lamp and bottle and stormed back up the stairs, slamming the cellar door so hard dust rained down from the ceiling. Darkness crashed back, and with it came the burning pain from the whip cut. Betsy felt blood trickling warm down her arm, soaking into her dress. But she was smiling. Smiling because she'd won that round. She'd faced him down, made him retreat. The chains might hold her body, but her spirit, that flame her mama had lit, still burned bright enough to make a grown white man flinch. The cost was the wound, though. And in this filthy cellar with rats that would smell blood, that wound could be a death sentence. Already she could hear them chittering with interest, drawn by the scent of fresh meat. Stay back, she warned them, gripping her metal shard. I'll kill every last one of you if I got to. She tore a strip from her already ragged dress and tried to bind the wound as best she could in the darkness. Her fingers worked by feel alone, and the pain made her dizzy. But she managed. The old root knowledge her mama had taught her came back. She needed spider webs to stop bleeding, needed certain herbs to prevent infection. But there were no spider webs within reach, no herbs in this stone hell. All she had was will. And Betsy had come to understand that sometimes will was the strongest medicine of all. Above her, the house settled into night rhythms. But Betsy's mind was racing, thinking about what Master Harlan had said. 105 days left. She'd survived 2 weeks. 2 weeks of darkness, hunger, cold. And now his visits that grew more dangerous each time. How much more could her body take before it gave out? Then, cutting through her dark thoughts, came a sound. Faint, barely audible. But there, 3 sharp knocks on the cellar door, then silence, then 3 more knocks. Betsy's heart jumped. That was a signal. Someone was trying to reach her. "Who there?" she called out, keeping her voice low. The knocks came again, then a whispered voice through the crack under the door. "Betsy, it's Josiah. Lord, I've been trying to reach you for days." Josiah. Betsy's whole body flooded with emotion so strong she almost couldn't breathe. "Josiah. Oh, Josiah, you shouldn't be here. If they catch you..." "I don't care. I had to know you was still alive. We all worried sick in the quarters. Old Silas been praying every night. The young ones keep asking when you coming back." "Tell them." Betsy's voice broke. "Tell them I'm surviving. Tell them not to lose hope." "I got something for you. Gonna slide it under the door. It ain't much, but..." There was a rustling sound, and then something small appeared in the thin crack of light under the door. Betsy stretched as far as her chains allowed, fingers straining until she could just barely touch it. She pulled it close, a piece of cornbread wrapped in cloth, and something else, a note written in careful letters. Josiah couldn't read or write much, but he'd learned his letters from an old slave who'd been taught by a sympathetic master's daughter before being sold south. In the faint light from under the door, Betsy made out the words, "We planning something. Be ready, love, Jay." Before she could respond, she heard footsteps above, heavy and angry. Master Harlan, probably wondering who was moving around his house in the middle of the night. "Go," Betsy hissed. "Get out of here now!" Josiah's footsteps retreated quickly, quiet as a ghost. The cellar door didn't open, and after a few tense minutes, the footsteps above moved away. Betsy sat in the darkness, clutching the cornbread and the note to her chest. Josiah had risked everything to bring her this. They were planning something. What, she didn't know. But it meant she wasn't alone. It meant people above ground were thinking about her, fighting for her in whatever ways they could. She ate the cornbread slowly, savoring every crumb. It was the first real food in 2 weeks, and it tasted like hope. But Josiah's note also brought fear. If they were planning something, if they tried to help her escape or fight back, Master Harlan would slaughter them all. He'd sell the men, whip the women, and make an example so brutal that nobody would dare resist again. "Don't do nothing foolish," Betsy whispered to the darkness, as if Josiah could still hear. "Don't sacrifice yourself for me. I can survive this. I have to." Yet even as she said it, she knew that bonds between people, love, loyalty, shared suffering, were stronger than any chains. Josiah wouldn't sit by and do nothing. Old Silas wouldn't just pray and accept. The quarters wouldn't forget her. And Master Harlan, drunk on power and whiskey, had no idea that every time he came down to torment her, every time he thought he was breaking her spirit, he was actually forging something harder than he could imagine. He was creating his own doom, one visit at a time. Betsy touched the whip wound on her shoulder. It throbbed with pain, but pain was something she'd learned to transform. Her mama used to say, "Pain is just the body's way of reminding you you're still alive, still fighting. Dead folks don't feel nothing. I feel everything," Betsy whispered fiercely. "Every cut, every hunger pang, every cold stone under my body, and I'm using it all as fuel. You hear me, Master Harlan? You think you visiting hell upon me, but you don't understand. My people been through hell before. We survived the Middle Passage. We survived the auction block. We'll survive you." In the darkness, with rat blood and her own blood staining her dress, with cornbread crumbs on her lips and Josiah's note clutched in her hand, Betsy made a vow. Not to the white man's God who'd somehow justified slavery. Not even to the ancestors, though they were listening. This vow was to herself. I will survive these 105 days. When I walk out of this darkness, I won't be broken. I'll be tempered, forged, dangerous, and Master Harlan will learn what it means to try and own what was never his to possess. The cellar door stayed closed that night. No more visits. Just Betsy and the rats and the darkness and a promise growing in her heart like a seed planted in blood. 105 days to go. But who was really counting anymore? Listen close now, 'cause this part of the story carries a weight that'll break your heart if you let it. Maybe 3 weeks had passed in that darkness, 21 days by Betsy's count, when her body started telling her secrets she'd tried to keep even from herself. The nausea came first, not from hunger, though Lord knows she was hungry enough. This was different. A rolling sickness in her belly that came in waves, especially when she managed to catch and eat another rat. She'd thought at first it was just her body rebelling against the foul food, the contaminated water that dripped from the ceiling, the general horror of her situation. But then came the tenderness in her breasts, the way certain smells, even in this place that mostly just smelled of rot and misery, would make her stomach heave. And the absence of her monthly bleeding, which should have come twice now since she'd been chained in this cellar. Betsy sat in the darkness, her chained hands moving to her belly, and understood with a clarity that cut sharper than any whip. She was carrying a child. No, she whispered to the darkness, no, no, no. But her body didn't lie. The signs were all there, plain as day to someone who'd helped birth babies in the quarters, who'd learned from her mama about women's bodies and the ways they kept their secrets. The realization sent her spiraling back through time to 3 months ago, before the cellar, before Lila's escape, before everything fell apart. Back to soft summer nights when Josiah would slip to her cabin after the overseer's rounds, when they'd hold each other in the darkness and whisper about impossible dreams. It was August, and the cotton stood high in the fields. Betsy had finished her day's work and was washing up by the water barrel when Josiah approached, his strong-backed frame silhouetted against the setting sun. "Walk with me?" he'd asked, and she'd nodded, following him to the edge of the quarters where an old oak provided some privacy. "Been thinking," Josiah said, taking her hands in his. "About us. About what happens when we get the chance to run." "Don't talk about running," Betsy warned. "Walls got ears, trees got eyes." "I know, but I need you to know something." He pulled her close. "Whatever happens, wherever this life takes us, I'm yours. You hear me? Chains can't break that. Distance can't break that. Nothing can." They'd made love that night under the stars, hidden by the oak's shadow, both knowing it was dangerous but unable to resist the need for human connection, for something beautiful in a world designed to strip away all beauty. Afterward, lying in his arms, Betsy had felt something shift inside her. Not physically, not yet, but spiritually. Like the ancestors were whispering that something new had begun. She'd known then. Some part of her had known. Now, chained in darkness with Master Harlan's threats echoing in her memory, Betsy understood the full weight of what she carried. Not just a baby, a child conceived in love, but born into bondage. A soul that would enter this world already enslaved, already owned by a man who saw human beings as livestock. "Oh God," she prayed, her voice breaking. "Oh God, what do I do? How do I protect this child when I can't even protect myself?" The answer came not from any god, but from deep within her own heart. You survive. Whatever it takes, you survive so this baby has a chance. But surviving took on new meaning now. Every bite of rat meat, disgusting as it was, became essential. She was eating for 2. Every drop of water she could catch became precious. Every hour she endured in this darkness was another hour her baby grew. Another small victory against Master Harlan's attempt to break her. Then came the terror. Did Master Harlan know? Had he somehow guessed? Is that why he'd said those words during his last visit? The ones she'd tried not to think about too much? She remembered now with horrifying clarity what he'd said 3 days ago. "I know your secrets, gal. Know all about what you and that buck Josiah been doing when you thought nobody was watching. And I know about the consequences of such behavior." At the time, she'd thought he was just trying to get in her head, to make her paranoid. But what if he actually knew? What if someone had told him? And if he knew, what would he do with that information? The answer came the very next evening, when the cellar door opened and Master Harlan descended with that particular swagger that meant he'd been drinking heavy and felt especially cruel. "Got some news for you," he announced, setting his lamp down and grinning like the devil himself. Been doing some thinking about your situation, about what happens when you get out of here, if you get out of here. And I've made a decision. Betsy stayed silent, her hand instinctively moving to cover her belly. That baby you're carrying, Master Harlan continued, watching her face in the lamplight. Oh yes, I know about it. My wife told me. Seems women can sense these things. She noticed before you got yourself thrown down here. Anyway, that baby's gonna be valuable property. Good stock, strong mother, strong father. I figure it'll fetch maybe $300–400 by the time it's old enough to sell. The words hit Betsy like physical blows. No. Oh yes, see, I've got debts. Gambling debts, business debts. Been thinking about how to settle them. And selling off some of the younger stock seems like the smartest move. Your baby will go to the highest bidder soon as it's weaned. Probably to one of those fancy plantations in Louisiana. Just like your mama went. You monster, Betsy breathed, rage and terror warring in her chest. You evil, wicked, damned monster. Master Harlan laughed. I'm a businessman, and you're the one who chose to bring a child into this world. You think love matters down here in the quarters? You think your feelings mean anything? That baby's mine the moment it's born. My property to do with as I please. He turned to leave, then paused on the stairs. Oh, and I've decided to tell Josiah about my plans. Figured he should know his child's gonna be sold off. Maybe it'll teach him the price of touching what belongs to someone else. The cellar door slammed shut, leaving Betsy in darkness so complete it matched the darkness in her soul. She pulled at her chains, screaming curses that would have made the devil himself blush, but the iron held firm. Her wrists bled from the struggle, but she didn't care. All she could think about was the baby growing in her belly, her and Josiah's child, already condemned to be torn away, sold, lost to the middle passage of Southern slavery. No, she sobbed, her whole body shaking. Not my baby, not my child. Please God, anything but that. But she knew the truth. Under slavery, there was no protection for a mother's love. No law that said a baby couldn't be sold away from its mama's breast. No power that could stop a master from doing whatever he wanted with his property. Unless. The thought came cold and clear through her grief. Unless that master was dead. Betsy's hand moved to the metal shard she'd been slowly sharpening on the stone walls. It was sharper now, more of a blade than a tool. She'd been working on it every day, telling herself it was just for protection, just in case. But now she understood its true purpose. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. This was about protecting her unborn child. This was about making sure that when this baby entered the world, it wouldn't be Master Harlan's property. It would be free, or she'd die trying to make it so. You hear me? She whispered fiercely, her hands on her belly. You hear me, little one? Your mama's gonna fight for you, gonna do things that would horrify civilized folks. But they ain't never been in chains. They ain't never had their babies sold away. They don't understand that sometimes love means becoming something dangerous. She thought about Josiah, learning that his child was already condemned. Would they whip him for his grief? Would they chain him up too? Or would they just laugh at his pain, the way white folks laughed at slave suffering like it was entertainment? A new sound entered the cellar then. The sound of Betsy sharpening her blade against stone with renewed purpose. Each scrape was a promise, each pass made it deadlier. She was no longer just enduring, she was preparing. 3 more months, she calculated. That's when this baby comes if I'm reading the signs right. 3 months means. She counted on her fingers in the darkness. About 90 days. I got maybe 90 days before I get too big, too weak to do what needs doing. That meant 85 more days in this cellar. 85 days to get strong enough, angry enough, desperate enough to do the unthinkable. The thing that went against everything she'd been taught about turning the other cheek. About trusting in the Lord. About accepting suffering as the lot of her people. I ain't accepting nothing, Betsy declared to the darkness, to the ancestors, to whatever was listening. Not anymore. Master Harlan think he broke me? He ain't seen nothing yet. He think threatening my baby will make me submit? He just gave me the one reason that's stronger than survival." She touched her belly again, feeling the barely there swell that would grow over the coming months. "I promise you," she whispered to her unborn child, "I promise you won't be born into his hands. One way or another you'll be free. Even if I have to kill to make it happen. Even if I have to die to make it happen, you'll be free." The darkness pressed in, heavy with the weight of promises and planning. Somewhere above, Master Harlan drank himself into unconscious oblivion, thinking he'd delivered the final blow to Betsy's spirit. He had no idea he'd just lit a fuse that would explode in his face. 85 days left. 85 days to become the thing he should have feared all along. Now listen here, child, because what happened next tests the boundary between this world and the next. Round about day 40. Lord have mercy, 40 days in that pit. Betsy's mind started walking roads that living folks ain't supposed to walk. Whether it was delirium from hunger, or the ancestors truly reaching through the veil, or maybe both at once, nobody can say for certain. But what happened in that darkness was real enough to change her forever. It started with dreams that felt more real than waking. Betsy would close her eyes, though in that absolute blackness, eyes open or closed made no difference. And suddenly, she wasn't in the cellar no more. She was standing on the deck of a slave ship, the Middle Passage vessel that brought her ancestors across that terrible water. The stench hit her first. Death, disease, human waste, and despair so thick you could taste it. "You see now?" a voice said beside her. Betsy turned and saw a woman, old as time itself, with tribal markings on her face and eyes that held the wisdom of continents. "You see what we survived so you could live?" "Who you?" Betsy asked, though somehow she already knew. "I am your grandmother's grandmother, child. I made this journey in chains just like you in chains now. But we didn't break then, and you won't break now. The blood don't allow it." The vision shifted like water, and suddenly Betsy was standing in a clearing deep in the woods. Night all around, but a fire burned bright in the center, and people, her people, danced in a circle. Ring shout, the old ones called it. Sacred dance that carried power from the homeland across the ocean. A man stepped forward from the circle, tall and proud despite the scars on his back. "I am Denmark Vesey," he said, his voice carrying the weight of history. "They hanged me in Charleston for daring to plan freedom. But death ain't the end of the fight, sister. You understand? We still here, still pushing, still whispering in the ears of the living." "Why you showing me this?" Betsy asked, tears running down her face. "Why now?" "Because you losing hope," another voice said. This one she recognized. Her mama, Aminata, stepping out of the shadows. She looked exactly as Betsy remembered, with those eyes that could see through to your soul. "Oh, baby, my sweet baby girl. Look at what they done to you." "Mama!" Betsy tried to run to her but found she couldn't move. "Mama, they gonna sell my baby, just like they sold me from you. I can't let that happen." Aminata reached out, and though Betsy knew this was vision or dream or spirit work, she felt her mama's hand on her cheek, warm and solid. "Then don't let it happen. You got power in you, child. Power I gave you. Power you earned through suffering. But you got to be willing to use it. Got to be willing to do what needs doing." "What you mean?" But Betsy already knew. She touched the metal shard hidden at her waist. "I mean," Aminata said softly, "that sometimes the only way to be free is to take freedom with blood. Our people tried praying, tried patience, tried being good Christians like the white folks told us to be. And where it get us? Still in chains, still watching our babies sold away, still dying in fields that ain't ours." Around them, the circle of ancestors nodded. Betsy saw faces from every generation, Africans fresh from the homeland, those born in bondage, those who died fighting, those who died submitting, all of them watching her, waiting. An old woman stepped forward, her hands stained with what looked like roots and earth. "I was a root doctor in my time," she said, "knew how to heal and how to harm. Let me teach you something, child. Come close." In the vision, Betsy knelt before the old woman. who began drawing symbols in the dirt with her finger. This here's for protection, this one's for strength, and this. She drew a complex pattern that seemed to move and shift even after her finger left the ground. This one's for justice, blood justice, the kind that evens the scales. How do I use it? Betsy asked. You already using it. Every day you survive down there, you feeding it with your pain, your rage, your love for that baby. When the time comes, you'll know. The ancestors will guide your hand. The vision shifted again, and Betsy was back in the cellar, but she wasn't alone. The space was filled with spirits, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. All the souls who'd suffered under slavery, who'd died with freedom songs on their lips, who'd never stopped fighting even when the fight seemed hopeless. We here with you, they whispered in chorus. Every minute, every hour. You ain't alone, Betsy. You carrying all of us with you. Our pain, our power, our promise that one day this evil system gonna fall. Then Nat Turner himself stepped forward, his face both terrible and beautiful. You know what they did to me? He asked. After my rebellion failed, they hanged me and flayed my skin, made coin purses and belts from it, tried to erase me from history. But I'm still here. My spirit still walks. And I'm telling you now, violence ain't always wrong. Sometimes it's the only language oppressors understand. But I'm just one woman, Betsy protested. Chained in darkness, starving, weak, how can I? You survived 40 days, Turner interrupted. 40 days and nights like Moses in the wilderness, like Jesus in the desert. You've been tested and tempered. That baby in your belly is giving you purpose. And we, he gestured to the crowd of spirits, we giving you power. Use it. The spirits began to fade, but their voices lingered, singing. It was a spiritual Betsy had heard before, but never like this. Hundreds of voices in perfect harmony, singing about freedom and blood and the promised land. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell old Pharaoh, let my people go. Thus spoke the Lord. Bold Moses said, if not, I'll smite your firstborn dead. When Betsy opened her eyes, or maybe they'd been open all along, the darkness felt different, less oppressive, almost protective, like a blanket wrapping around her. She touched her mojo bag, then her sharpened blade, then her belly where the baby grew. I understand now, she whispered to the spirits she could no longer see but knew were still there. You ain't telling me to give up. You telling me to fight, not with prayer and patience, but with everything I got. Even if it means becoming something the white folks fear. Even if it means blood. Above her, she heard a commotion. Voices raised in anger. Then a sound that made her blood run cold. The crack of a whip and a man's scream of pain. A scream she recognized. Josiah. They were whipping Josiah. Betsy pulled against her chains with renewed fury, the metal biting into her raw wrists. She could hear Overseer Cobb's voice. This is what happens when you ask too many questions about that gal in the cellar. This is what happens when you forget your place. The whip cracked again and again, maybe 20 times, maybe more. Each strike felt like it was landing on Betsy's own back. When it finally stopped, she heard Master Harlan's voice, cold and satisfied. Let him down. Let him crawl back to the quarters so everyone can see what defiance costs. Footsteps retreated, then silence, except for a soft groaning from somewhere above. Josiah suffering because of her, because of their love, because of the baby that grew inside her. Something broke in Betsy then. Not her spirit, but her last hesitation. The ancestors had shown her the way, had given her permission to do what needed doing. And now Harlan had hurt Josiah, the father of her child, the man who'd risked everything just to bring her cornbread and hope. I swear, Betsy said, her voice deadly calm, on every ancestor that walked through fire to get me here, on every spirit that watches over us, on the baby in my belly and the blood in my veins, Master Harlan gonna pay with everything he got. His cruelty, his violence, his evil, it all gonna come back on his head like the wrath of God himself. She began working on her chains with renewed purpose, testing every link, every bolt, looking for weakness. The metal shard became her constant companion, sharpening, waiting, preparing. And in the darkness, surrounded by spirits she couldn't see but knew were there, Betsy transformed from victim to avenger. The cellar wasn't her prison anymore, it was her forge. And she was being hammered into a weapon that slavery had created but could never control. 40 days down, 80 to go. But Master Harlan's days? Those were numbered even smaller. Look here, child, 'cause this is where everything changed. 60 days. 2 full months chained in that darkness, and Betsy wasn't the same woman who'd been dragged down those stairs. The transformation was complete. Body and soul forged into something that would make the devil himself think twice. Her body had changed in terrible ways. The flesh had melted off her bones from starvation, leaving her skeletal thin. Her dress hung off her frame like rags on a scarecrow. The whip wounds on her back had scarred over, thick and raised. Her wrists and ankles bore permanent marks from the iron shackles that never came off. And her belly, despite the starvation, showed a small swell. The baby somehow surviving on nothing but will, and whatever scraps of food Betsy could find or steal. But her eyes, Lord have mercy, her eyes, they burned with something that wasn't quite human anymore. Something ancient and terrible and absolutely unbreakable. The darkness that had been meant to drive her mad had instead given her a kind of sight that went beyond physical vision. She could feel things now, sense movement in the blackness, navigate the cellar by sound and intuition like one of them conjure women her mama used to speak of. The metal shard she'd found was now a proper blade, honed sharp as a razor on the stone walls. She'd worked on it every single day, whispering prayers and curses over it, feeding it with her blood when she cut herself, turning it into something more than just metal. The old root doctor ways her mama taught her. She understood them now. You could put power into objects, make them carry your intentions. This blade carried one intention: death to Master Harlan. On day 60, when the cellar door opened and lamplight flooded down, Betsy didn't cower or turn away like she used to. She stared straight up at the figure descending the stairs, unblinking, unmoved. Master Harlan reached the bottom and stopped. The lamp shook slightly in his hand. "Well, well," he said, trying to sound confident, but not quite managing it. 2 months down. You still alive down here? I admit I'm impressed. Most would have gone mad by now. Betsy said nothing, just stared at him with those burning eyes, a slight smile playing at her cracked lips. Cat still got your tongue? Harlan took a step closer, then stopped. Something in her expression made him hesitate. You look different. Do I? Betsy's voice was a rasp from disuse, but steady as iron. Maybe that's 'cause I am different. 60 days in the dark, Master Harlan. You know what that does to a person. It either breaks them, or it makes them into something you can't comprehend. He laughed, but it sounded nervous. You're still in chains, gal, still at my mercy. Don't go thinking you got any power here. Power? Betsy leaned forward as far as her chains allowed, and Master Harlan actually took a step back. I got more power now than you'll ever understand. 60 days talking to spirits. 60 days learning from the ancestors. 60 days becoming exactly what your kind should have feared all along. You're talking nonsense, delusional from hunger. Am I? Betsy's smile widened, showing teeth that seemed too sharp in the lamplight. Then why you shaking? Why your hand trembling on that lamp? Why you standing at the edge of the stairs instead of coming closer like you used to? Master Harlan's face flushed red. I don't fear you. You're nothing, property, a slave woman who's gonna what? Betsy interrupted. Break? Submit? Beg for mercy? She laughed, and the sound echoed off the stone walls like breaking glass. Master Harlan, I got something to tell you, something you need to hear real clear. When I get out of these chains, and I will get out of these chains, you're gonna wish you killed me when you had the chance. Is that a threat? But his voice cracked on the words. It's a promise, written in blood, witnessed by spirits, guaranteed by every ancestor who died in bondage and never got their justice. You took 60 days trying to break me. All you did was give me time to plan your death in exquisite detail. Master Harlan's hand moved to his whip, but he didn't take it out. Couldn't quite bring himself to get close enough to use it. You insane. You've completely lost your mind. Maybe I have, Betsy said softly. Or maybe I finally found it. Found the part of me that your system tried to kill. The part that knows we ain't meant to be slaves. The part that understands sometimes the only way to be free is to burn everything down. She touched her belly, protective. You said you gonna sell my baby. Remember that? Said you gonna take my child and auction it off like cattle. Well, I got news for you, Master. This baby ain't never gonna be your property. 'Cause before that happens, I'm gonna take your life with these hands. Gonna watch the light fade from your eyes. Gonna make sure your last thought is knowing you died at the hands of a slave woman you couldn't break. Master Harlan backed up to the stairs. You're not right. You're not natural. Natural? Betsy's laughter filled the cellar. Nothing about slavery is natural. Nothing about what you done to me, to my people, is natural. You made me this way, Master Harlan. You and every white man who thought he could own a human soul. I'm your creation, your monster. And monsters got a way of turning on their makers. He practically ran up the stairs, slamming the cellar door behind him. Betsy heard the heavy bolt slide home, heard his rapid footsteps retreating across the floor above. Then silence. She sat back against the stone wall, her heart pounding, but her mind clear as crystal. That had felt good. Better than good. For the first time since being chained down here, she'd seen real fear in his eyes. Fear of her. The power dynamic had shifted, but her moment of satisfaction was interrupted by sounds from above. Doors slamming, Master Harlan's voice raised in anger, and then footsteps. Multiple sets, coming down the stairs. The door burst open. Master Harlan stood there with Overseer Cobb and 2 field drivers, all carrying clubs and looking wary. "Check the chains," Harlan ordered. "Make sure they're still secure. She's been down here too long, getting ideas." The men descended cautiously, eyeing Betsy like she was a rabid dog. They inspected her shackles, testing each one, while she sat perfectly still, that same unsettling smile on her face. The blade was hidden in her dress. They didn't see it, didn't think to search her. "Chains are holding, sir," Cobb reported. "But she do look peculiar. Eyes ain't right." "I don't care about her eyes," Harlan snapped. "I care about those chains. Add another lock to each one. Double secure them. I don't want any possibility of her getting loose." They worked quickly, adding more iron, more locks, making her bonds even heavier. Betsy didn't resist, didn't even seem to notice, just kept staring at Master Harlan with those burning eyes until he couldn't take it anymore and ordered everyone back upstairs. When the darkness returned, Betsy laughed softly. They thought more chains would hold her, thought iron was stronger than will, but they didn't understand what 60 days of suffering had taught her. Chains only held the body. The spirit, once truly free, could never be contained. She touched the new locks, feeling their weight. Challenge accepted. 60 more days, she whispered to the darkness, to the spirits, to her unborn child. 60 more days, and then Master Harlan learns what happens when you try to break what was never meant to bend. Above her, in the big house, Master Harlan poured himself a large whiskey with shaking hands. For the first time since this whole thing started, he felt genuine fear. That woman down there wasn't human anymore. She'd become something else, something dangerous. He thought about ending it. Just going down there with a pistol and being done with it. But that would be admitting defeat, would be showing weakness to the other slaves. No, he'd see this through. 60 more days, then she'd be released. And if she hadn't learned her lesson by then, well, there were always the sugar plantations in Louisiana. Nobody survived those for long. But deep down, in a place he didn't want to examine too closely, Master Harlan knew the truth. He'd made a terrible mistake. The woman in that cellar wasn't broken. She was tempered, forged, sharpened. He was going to pay for that mistake with his life. In the darkness below, Betsy began working on the new locks with her blade. Testing, probing, learning. The ancestors whispered encouragement. The spirits sang songs of liberation. And inside her belly, the baby kicked for the first time, a small flutter that felt like a promise. Freedom was coming, and it would be written in blood. Now listen here, because while Betsy was being forged in darkness, the world above was falling apart at the seams. Round about day 70, things on Willow Creek Plantation started going wrong in ways that made even the overseers nervous. Some folks might call it coincidence, but them that knew, them that understood the old ways, they recognized it for what it was, the ancestors working their will. It started with the cotton. Despite perfect growing weather, the bolls came in stunted and diseased. Whole sections of the field turned brown and died overnight, like something had poisoned the very earth. Master Harlan brought in specialists from Savannah, but nobody could explain it. The soil tested fine, the water was clean, but the cotton, the king crop that made him rich, was failing. "It's a curse," old Silas muttered to the other field hands as they worked the dying rows. "That girl down in the cellar got power. Her mama's people knew root work. And when you do wrong to someone with that kind of knowledge, the land itself turns against you." Josiah, his back still healing from the whipping, nodded slowly. "Betsy told me once that her grandmama could make crops wither with just a word, could call down plagues on slave catchers. I didn't believe it then, but now." The whispers spread through the quarters like wildfire. Betsy had become legend, even while still chained in darkness. Songs were sung about her in the hush harbors when the overseers weren't listening. Children were told her story as an example of strength that couldn't be broken. And with each passing day, the slaves grew bolder in small ways, working slower, breaking tools accidentally, looking Master Harlan in the eye instead of down at their feet. But the cotton failure was just the beginning. Master Harlan's debts, already substantial from gambling and poor business decisions, became crushing. Creditors from Charleston and Savannah started showing up, demanding payment. The bank threatened to foreclose on portions of the plantation. Harlan was forced to sell off 3 families of slaves just to keep his head above water, including a young mother and her 2 children, torn apart on the auction block in Savannah. That's when the real trouble started. An old woman named Ruth, who'd been on Willow Creek for 40 years, watched them drag away her granddaughter. She'd always been quiet, submissive, the kind of slave white folks called good. But something broke in her that day. She walked right up to Overseer Cobb, looked him dead in the eye and said, "You gonna pay for this, all of you. The earth gonna drink your blood same way it drank ours." Cobb raised his whip, but before he could strike, Ruth collapsed, dead before she hit the ground. Heart just stopped. She fell with a smile on her face and them words hanging in the air like a curse that couldn't be taken back. They buried her that evening in the slave cemetery at the edge of the plantation. But that night, strange things started happening. Dogs howled for hours, refusing to be silenced. Horses in the stable kicked at their stalls and broke free, running wild through the fields. And in the big house, Mistress Caroline's already fragile health took a sharp turn. She started seeing things, hearing voices, screaming about spirits in the corners of her room. "It's that woman in the cellar," she sobbed to her husband. "She's bringing down judgment on us. I told you to let her go. I told you this was wrong." "Shut up." Master Harlan backhanded her across the face, something he'd never done before. The pressure was getting to him, making him meaner, more desperate. "She's just a slave. She's got no power. This is all... It's just bad luck, bad timing." But even he didn't sound convinced. Down in the quarters, Josiah was gathering people for a meeting in one of the cabins. Maybe 15 men and women, all with fire in their eyes and rebellion in their hearts. Betsy's suffering had awakened something in them, a rage that had been simmering for generations, just waiting for a spark. "We can't let her stay down there," Josiah said, keeping his voice low. 70 days. 70 days of torture. And for what? For helping a sister reach freedom? That ain't no crime, that's righteous. "What you proposing?" asked Samuel, a strong-backed man who worked the rice fields. "We can't just walk up to the big house and demand her release." "No," Josiah agreed. "But we can make things difficult. Make Master Harlan so busy dealing with problems that he don't have time to focus on keeping Betsy locked up. Crops failing is a start, but we can do more. Tools go missing. Fences get broken. Small fires in places that don't matter but make him nervous. Nothing that points directly at us, but enough to make him feel pressure from all sides. That's dangerous talk, an older woman named Sarah warned. They catch us doing sabotage, they'll whip us to death. Or worse, sell us downriver like they did Ruth's grandbaby. They doing that anyway. Josiah's voice rose, then he caught himself and lowered it again. Don't you see? We already at rock bottom. Already got nothing to lose. Betsy showed us that. She stood up knowing what it would cost, and she did it anyway. Now it's our turn. The discussion went on for hours. Some were convinced, others scared. But by the end of the night, they'd agreed on a plan. Small acts of resistance. Nothing major enough to bring down the fury of the white folks, but enough to make Willow Creek Plantation start feeling like a place where the masters weren't quite in control anymore. The next morning, 3 plows broke within an hour of starting work. That afternoon, someone let the chickens out of the coop and it took all day to round them up. That evening, a section of fence near the main road collapsed, letting 2 cows wander off. Each incident by itself was nothing, just bad luck, clumsy slaves, accidents. But together, over days and weeks, they painted a picture of a plantation coming apart at the seams. And Master Harlan noticed. His drinking got worse, his temper more volatile. He'd ride through the fields on his horse, whip in hand, looking for someone to blame. But the slaves had gotten clever. Work slow, but not too slow. Make mistakes, but nothing obvious. Always have an excuse ready. Meanwhile, creditors kept circling. The bank sent representatives to inspect the property, and they didn't like what they saw. Dying cotton, demoralized workers, a master clearly losing control. Whispers started in Savannah society that Edmund Harlan's son was running the family plantation into the ground. I need money, Harlan told Overseer Cobb one evening. Both of them standing on the porch watching the sunset over fields that used to make them rich. Need to sell more slaves. That buck Josiah, he's been trouble since we locked up his woman. Fetch good money, and maybe some of the older ones who can't work as hard anymore. Cobb said carefully. Begging your pardon, but selling off more folks might cause problems. The quarter's already on edge. Ruth's death spooked them. They whispering about curses and such. We push too hard. We might have a real uprising on our hands. Let them try, Harlan snarled. I'll put down any rebellion with blood. Make them remember who's in charge. But his words sounded hollow even to his own ears, because deep down, he knew something had shifted. The slaves looked at him differently now, not with fear and submission, but with something that looked uncomfortably like contempt, and it all traced back to that woman in his cellar. That night, Harlan went down to check on Betsy for the first time in a week. He stood at the top of the stairs, lamp in hand, and called down, "You still alive down there?" Silence for a moment. Then Betsy's voice, stronger than it should be. "More alive than you, Master Harlan. Question is, how much longer you got left?" He slammed the door shut without going down. His hands were shaking. The house felt different lately. Colder, darker, like something malevolent had taken up residence. Mistress Caroline was right. Ever since that woman had been put in the cellar, everything had gone wrong, but he couldn't let her out, not yet. That would be admitting defeat, would be showing weakness. Just 50 more days. 50 days and this nightmare would be over. He'd release her, maybe even sell her off immediately to get rid of the problem. Start fresh. Except Master Harlan was starting to understand something that terrified him. This wasn't going to end with Betsy's release. This was going to end with blood. His blood, and there wasn't a damn thing he could do to stop it. In the quarters that night, Josiah led the group in a prayer that was half spiritual, half war chant. Lord, if you there, we asking for strength. We asking for justice. We asking for deliverance from them that oppress us. And if you ain't there, if you ain't listening, then we taking matters into our own hands. Either way, change is coming. Blood is coming. Freedom is coming. 70 days down, 50 to go, and Willow Creek Plantation was already burning, even if nobody could see the flames yet. Listen close now, child. 'Cause this is where the reckoning comes. Day 120, 4 full months in that darkness, and Betsy could feel it in her bones. Today was the day Master Harlan had promised to release her, or try to claim what he thought was his. Either way, today was the day everything changed. She'd been counting, not with marks on walls, too dark for that, but with the rhythm of water dripping from the ceiling. 120 days of drops, like a clock ticking down to judgment. Her body was skeletal now, barely recognizable as human. The baby in her belly somehow still lived, a small hard mound that defied all logic of survival. Her hair had grown wild and matted. Her fingernails were cracked and bloody from working the chains. But her eyes, Lord have mercy, those eyes burned with purpose so fierce it could light the darkness itself. The chains were nearly free. Took her 4 months, but she'd done it. Used that metal shard to work at the bolts day and night, grinding away stone and metal grain by grain. The shackles on her left wrist would come off with one good pull. The right ankle was loose enough to slip. She'd kept them looking secure, but they were ready, just waiting for the right moment. That moment came at dusk. She heard the familiar sound of boots on the floor above, but heavier this time. Stumbling. Master Harlan had been drinking all day. She could tell by the pattern of his footsteps, irregular and careless. Perfect. The cellar door opened. Lamplight flooded down and Master Harlan descended, more drunk than she'd ever seen him. His shirt was half unbuttoned, his eyes bloodshot, and he carried a bottle of whiskey in one hand. No whip this time. He thought he didn't need it. Well, he slurred, reaching the bottom of the stairs. 120 days. I told you I'd break you. Told you I'd make you proper. And here we are. Betsy looked up at him, her face a mask of suffering. She let her body sag, let him see what he wanted to see. A broken woman, defeated, ready to submit. Please, she whispered, her voice cracking. Please, Massa. I learned my lesson. I be good now. Harlan grinned, triumphant. That's what I like to hear. See? Knew you'd come around. Just needed the right persuasion. He set the lamp down and took a long drink from his bottle. Now, before I let you out of them chains, we gonna establish some new rules. First being, you're mine now. Completely mine. You understand? Yes, Massa, Betsy said, lowering her eyes like a proper submissive slave. Good? Real good. He moved closer, emboldened by what he thought was victory. Your baby when it comes? Still gonna sell it. That ain't changed. But you gonna stay here, in the big house where I can keep an eye on you. Keep you close. Real close. His hand reached for her face and Betsy let him touch her cheek. Let him think he'd won. Let him lean in close enough that she could smell the whiskey on his breath and see the cruel satisfaction in his eyes. That's when she moved. Her left hand, the one with the loose shackle, twisted free with a single violent jerk. Before Harlan could react, she grabbed the chain still attached to her right wrist and whipped it across his face. The iron links caught him across the temple with a sound like a hammer striking meat. He stumbled backward, blood pouring from the gash, dropping his bottle. What? He started, but Betsy was already on him. 4 months of rage, 4 months of suffering, 4 months of planning this exact moment. It all exploded out of her like a dam breaking. She wrapped the chain around his throat and pulled with strength that shouldn't have existed in her emaciated body. But this wasn't natural strength. This was the power of ancestors flowing through her veins, the accumulated fury of every slave who'd ever died in bondage, the desperate love of a mother protecting her unborn child. Master Harlan clawed at the chain, his face turning purple. He was bigger, stronger, but she had surprise in position. And most importantly, she had purpose. He was fighting to save his life. She was fighting for her soul. You thought you broke me? Betsy hissed in his ear as he struggled. You thought 4 months in darkness would make me submit? All you did was give me time. Time to sharpen my blade. Time to loosen my chains. Time to plan exactly how you gonna die. He tried to throw her off, but his movements were growing weaker. The alcohol in his system wasn't helping. His hands grasped desperately at her arms, but she held on like death itself. "This is for my mama," Betsy growled, pulling tighter. "For every slave you sold. For Josiah's back you tore open. For my baby you threatened to steal. For Ruth who died cursing your name. For all of us." Harlan's struggles became spasms. His eyes bulged, full of terror and disbelief. He couldn't comprehend it. Dying at the hands of a slave woman, in his own cellar, on the day he thought he'd finally broken her spirit. "And most of all," Betsy whispered as his movement stilled, "this is for me. For the girl you tried to erase. For the woman you couldn't break. For the mother you'll never touch." With one final savage pull, she heard it, the crack of his neck breaking. The sound echoed off the stone walls like a judgment from God himself. Master Harlan's body went limp, his dead eyes staring at nothing, his last expression one of complete shock. Betsy held on for another minute, making sure. Then she let go, and his body crumpled to the floor like the worthless thing it was. She stood over him, breathing hard, chains hanging from her wrists, blood and sweat coating her skeletal frame. "You don't own nothing now," she told his corpse. "Not me. Not my baby. Not even your own breath." She looked up at the cellar door where lamplight spilled down. Freedom. After 120 days, freedom was right there. But she couldn't just walk out. Not yet. First, she had to finish loosening her chains completely. Had to take his keys. Had to prepare. Her hands shook as she worked. Not from fear, but from the enormity of what she'd done. She'd killed her master. Under the law, that was the worst crime a slave could commit. They'd hunt her down like an animal. They'd torture her in ways that would make the last 4 months look merciful. No. She pushed those thoughts away. The ancestors hadn't brought her this far to fail now. She pulled the final chain free, took the keys from Harlan's belt, and grabbed his lamp. Her legs were weak from disuse, but she forced them to work, climbing the stairs one slow step at a time. At the top, she paused. Through the door, she could hear the house settling into night. Somewhere, Mistress Caroline was in her room, probably sedated with laudanum as usual. The house slaves would be finishing their duties. And outside, in the quarters, Josiah was waiting. They all were waiting. Betsy opened the door and stepped into the big house for the first time as a woman who'd killed her master. The lamp flickered, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Behind her in the cellar, Master Harlan's body lay cooling. Ahead of her, the night waited. And beyond that, freedom or death. Either way, she was ready. Now hear me, child, as I tell you the final chapter of Betsy's story. The part that gets whispered in the quarters even now, passed down like sacred testimony of what a soul can do when pushed beyond all breaking. Betsy stood in the hallway of the big house, lamplight flickering across her gaunt face. Master Harlan's blood still wet on the chains dangling from her wrists. The house was quiet, except for the ticking of a grandfather clock and the distant sound of Mistress Caroline's drugged breathing from upstairs. 4 months ago, Betsy had been dragged through these halls in chains. Now she walked them as something else entirely, judge, jury, and executioner. She moved through the kitchen, finding bread and cold meat. Her stomach cramped at the sight of real food, but she forced herself to eat slowly, needed strength for what came next. While she ate, she found a knife, a real one, sharp and clean, and tucked it into the waistband of her ragged dress. Then she filled a cloth sack with food, whatever she could carry. The back door opened silently. Betsy stepped into the Georgia night, breathing free air for the first time in 4 months. The stars above looked impossibly bright after so long in darkness. She could see the North Star, the drinking gourd that pointed toward freedom. But first, she had business in the quarters. The slave cabins were dark, everyone asleep after a day's brutal work. Betsy moved like a ghost between them until she found the one she sought. She tapped 3 times on the rough wooden door, their old signal. Inside, movement. Then Josiah's voice, wary. "Who there?" "It's me," Betsy whispered. The door flew open. Josiah stood there, shirtless, the whip scars on his back visible even in the darkness. When he saw her, his face went through a dozen emotions at once. Shock, joy, fear, disbelief. Betsy! Lord Jesus, Betsy! He pulled her inside, his hands trembling as they touched her face, her shoulders, confirming she was real. How did you— The chains, are you— Master Harlan's dead, Betsy said simply. I killed him, down in the cellar. His body's still there. Josiah's eyes went wide. You killed— Then understanding crashed over him like a wave. We got to run now. When they find him in the morning. I know. Betsy touched his face, feeling the familiar contours she'd dreamed about for 4 months. But I couldn't leave without saying goodbye. Without seeing you one more time. Goodbye, Josiah's voice cracked. Baby, I'm coming with you. Ain't no way I'm letting you face this alone. No. Betsy's voice was firm. You stay. They'll know it was me who killed him. My chains in that cellar. My blood. They won't suspect you if you act surprised when they find the body. Play ignorant. Grieve like a proper slave. And when the time is right, when things settle down, you follow the North Star. Follow the drinking gourd. I'll be waiting. Betsy, listen to me. She pressed something into his hand, a piece of cloth torn from her dress. This here's got my scent on it, got our baby's essence in it. You keep this. And when our child is born, and it will be born free, I swear it, you'll know, the ancestors will tell you, and you'll come find us. Tears ran down Josiah's face, catching in the lamplight. I love you. God help me, I love you so much. I love you too. Betsy kissed him, pouring 4 months of longing and pain and hope into it. Now I gotta go. Every minute I stay puts you in danger. She slipped out of the cabin before he could protest further. Behind her, she heard him stifle a sob. It nearly broke her resolve, but she kept moving. Toward the edge of the plantation, toward the woods, toward the river that would carry her scent away from the dogs they'd surely send after her. Old Silas appeared from another cabin, as if he'd been waiting. The ancient man pressed a small bundle into her hands. Herbs for the journey, protection magic, your mama's people's knowledge. And this, he handed her a roughly drawn map. Stations on the Underground Railroad, safe houses, conductors. You follow this, you might just make it north. Thank you, Betsy whispered, for everything, for keeping hope alive in the quarters. Child, you the one kept hope alive. You the one showed us that spirits can't be chained. Now go, run like the wind. And when you free, you remember us still bound. You tell our story. Betsy nodded and ran. She ran through cotton fields she'd worked since childhood, her bare feet knowing every path. She ran past the whipping post where she'd seen so many suffer. She ran toward the tree line where the deep south forest began, dark and protective. Behind her, Willow Creek Plantation lay quiet, not yet knowing the revolution that had occurred in its cellar. The river was cold when she waded in, but Betsy barely felt it. She walked downstream for maybe an hour, letting the water carry away her scent, then climbed out on the far bank. The forest swallowed her, and she became part of its shadows. Days blurred together after that, following old Silas's map, moving only at night, hiding during the day. She ate wild berries and roots her mama had taught her about. She avoided roads and houses. She heard dogs baying in the distance once, paddy rollers on her trail, but she'd rubbed herself with wild onion and crossed 3 different streams, and they lost her scent. On the 7th night, she found the first station, a Quaker family's barn marked with a quilt hanging in a specific pattern. They fed her, gave her clean clothes, and hid her in a false bottom of their wagon. The conductor, a black man who'd bought his own freedom, told her, "You ain't the first, and you won't be the last. The railroad runs deep, we'll get you north." Months passed. Betsy moved from station to station, always north toward the star that didn't lie. Her belly grew larger, the baby becoming impossible to hide. But the conductors helped her, protected her, kept her moving despite her condition. She gave birth in a safe house in Pennsylvania, just across the Mason-Dixon line, a free state. The baby, a girl, strong and healthy despite everything, came into the world crying with fury that made Betsy laugh through her tears. "You free," Betsy whispered to her daughter. You hear me? You were born free. Whatever happens now, you came into this world belonging to nobody but yourself and God. She named the baby Aminata, after her mama. And sometimes, late at night, Betsy swore she could hear her mama's spirit singing lullabies from across the veil. Years passed. Betsy became a conductor herself on the Underground Railroad, helping others escape what she'd escaped. She never forgot the promise she'd made to old Silas. She told her story to anyone who'd listen, told it in churches, in abolitionist meetings, in the homes of free black folks up north. The story of a woman who survived 120 days in darkness and came out stronger than chains. And one night, maybe 3 years after her escape, there came a knock on her door. She opened it to find Josiah standing there, thin and worn from the journey but alive. He'd followed the North Star just like she'd told him to. Behind him stood a few others from Willow Creek quarters, those who dared to run, who dared to be free. They held each other for a long time, no words needed. Then Josiah met his daughter for the first time, and Betsy saw tears of joy run down his face as little Aminata grabbed his finger with her tiny hand. "We made it," Josiah whispered. "Against everything, we made it." "Not all of us," Betsy said softly, thinking of those still in bondage. "The fight ain't over. Won't be over till the last chain breaks and the last master falls. But we here, we survived, and we'll keep fighting till every one of our people is free." To this very day, folks down in Georgia tell stories about Willow Creek Plantation, how it fell apart after Master Harlan's death, how the land never recovered, how the house eventually burned down under mysterious circumstances. Some say on quiet nights you can still hear the rattle of chains coming from where that cellar used to be. But them that know, them that understand the deeper truth, they say those chains ain't sounds of bondage. They the sound of chains breaking, the sound of freedom being taken by force, the sound of a woman who refused to be broken. Betsy lived to see the Civil War, lived to see slavery end, lived to see her daughter grow up free, never knowing chains except in the stories her mama told. When Betsy finally passed, old and full of years, they say the ancestors themselves came to carry her home, said she'd earned her rest, earned her place among the great ones who fought and never surrendered. So you see, child, this story ain't just about one woman. It's about all of us, every soul who survived the Middle Passage, every person who endured the auction block, every mother who had her babies stolen, every father who was whipped for daring to be human. We survived. We resisted. And we're still here, carrying the memory of them that came before. Who suffered, who resisted, left memory, and memory we keep here, in the files of slavery. The chains may be gone, but the stories remain. And as long as we tell them, as long as we remember, them spirits ain't never gonna be silenced. This was the testimony of Betsy do Porão, the slave who spent 120 days in darkness and came out carrying the light of freedom. And her story echoes still in echoes from the quarters. Remember her name. Remember her fight. Remember that the human spirit, when pushed to its limit, don't break. It transforms into something that can break chains instead. Amen and amen.